Hello there and welcome to the Bitcoin Takeover podcast. This is season 16, episode 8. This episode is sponsored by SiteShift, Citrea, Bitcoin.com news. Check that out. I'm going to tell you more about it. Layer 2 Labs, NoOnes.com, and Hodling.ch. Our guest today is Alex Romanov. He's the CTO of Beam. If you're not aware, MimbleWimble was a very big deal a few years ago. And when it was announced, it was considered a technology so powerful it might even threaten Bitcoin. And you had two main implementations that were launched in early 2019. Basically, on the 10th anniversary of Bitcoin, you had Beam, which launched on the 3rd of January 2019. And then you had Grin, which is different, but based on the same protocol. And that one was launched, I think, on the 14th of January. Or 15th. I don't want to say something stupid. It was around the time. And there was a lot of hype surrounding this tech. And even though some people may have forgotten about it, it's still being developed, it's still growing, it's still interesting, and it does stuff that maybe you would not even think about. So I tried the wallet. I spoke with some people before this interview, and now I got the CTO of the project to talk to us about it and walk us through the functions of Beam. And there's a lot to learn because all of this is compatible with Bitcoin, as we found out from the experiments that Litecoin is running with the extension block of MimbleWimble. We can actually bring this to Bitcoin either as extension block or sidechain. So welcome, Alex. It's really good to have you here.
Hi, thank you very much for having me. It's great to be here as well. A lot to discuss.
Yeah, this is really, really exciting. First of all, why did you start working on Beam as opposed to any other project that maybe pays better, is more popular, or I don't know?
Yeah, well, I was not what you would call kind of a native crypto person back in 2018 when we started working on Beam. I was just looking for a job, any project. And one of the reasons that I have got into Beam specifically was because of a mutual friend and my friend, Guy Korem, who was a long-time crypto enthusiast and professional here in Israel back in those days already. He was in crypto since, I think, 2013, mostly in mining. And we met each other at one of the previous gigs that we worked on together and stayed in touch. So whenever I was looking for a new project, I usually called everybody I know to see if there is anything interesting going on. And he said, listen, I have this idea to build something in crypto. I said, wait a second, I don't know absolutely anything about it. I didn't have a single Bitcoin or any other cryptocurrency these days. And actually, the first crypto I ever held was Beam that we just launched. So for me, it was a completely new and field that I didn't know anything about. So when he described his idea, it was basically to try to create a better privacy coin compared to what was on the market in 2018, which was mostly Monero and Zcash. There were several others, but obviously Monero and Zcash stood out. And the issue with both of them was that the blockchain size was very large. It was compared to Bitcoin for the same amount of transactions. So it was kind of more difficult to scale, connect new nodes and synchronize them. Also, obviously in Zcash, there was this a huge amount of non-private transactions in the blockchain, which was a huge detriment to the entire privacy. And so MimbleWimble was chosen back in those days, and I will kind of talk in depth about it, obviously, as a very good compromise for good privacy with good kind of scalability in terms of the blockchain size, because one of the features of MimbleWimble is the ability to compact blocks and not store kind of all the previous blockchain UTXOs in order to still be able to verify the chain. So that was kind of the idea of where Beam and MimbleWimble started.
I remember when it launched, it was super exciting. People were posting about running Grin. Some of them were buying Beam tokens. And at the time, they were not very clearly distinguishable. Of course, there was the governance model. Of course, there was the difference of programming languages because Grin is written in Rust and Beam is written in C++. But it was not clear to me what's really the difference between the two pieces of software. But today, I think this difference is more apparent because Beam is focusing on smart contracts, on issuing tokens, on interoperability with other chains. I noticed that in your client, you can connect your Bitcoin full node, you can connect your Litecoin, Dogecoin, Ethereum full node, and do
Yeah.
swaps between them. It's really interesting that you added all of these features. And I have to ask you, how does this scale? Because you mentioned that this was the primary focus. It's true that Monero and even the Orchard Zcash transactions are rather large in size. And I have to ask you, how does this compare? How does MimbleWimble compare today with Monero and Zcash in terms of transaction sizes?
So MimbleWimble kind of, first of all, right now, and we'll probably talk about it, it's not just MimbleWimble and Beam. We use a protocol called Lelantus-MimbleWimble, which is the combination of MimbleWimble and Lelantus. You talked about it with Ruben.
Yeah, I'm going to ask you to also explain it.
Absolutely. So original kind of classic MimbleWimble transactions, they are fairly small, but they're also interactive. You need both the sender and the receiver to sign the transaction before it can be added to the blockchain. Every MimbleWimble transaction consists of basically three parts: the inputs, outputs, and something called the kernels. The original idea of MimbleWimble, which was described in the original white paper back in 2016, it was anonymously published, was to basically take the idea of a Bitcoin transaction, UTXO-based design, and replace the script with a cryptographic primitive that's called the Pedersen commitment. What it does, it kind of takes two simple elliptic curve multiplications. So you have the value of the transaction, how much money you're sending, and you multiply it by a point on an elliptic curve. So you kind of encrypt it this way. And then you add to it another factor, which is called the blinding factor. It's a long scalar, basically a secret key that nobody should know. And it's multiplied by a different point on the elliptic curve. And these two are added together. So this is the commitment. The properties of the commitment is that it's both hiding and binding. It means that I cannot change the value that I have committed to. This is the binding part. And nobody can see it because it's encrypted kind of until I provide my secret key and decrypt it for you. And each input and output is basically this, right? So that's kind of the huge or the major idea of the MimbleWimble, but it's not the only one. And like I will explain how genius it actually is. So once you do that, you get an ability to add many, many transactions together because all of the transactions looks exactly alike, right? So you have just series of inputs, series of outputs. And if you look at the block of MimbleWimble, it kind of looks like one big transaction with lots of inputs and lots of outputs and kernels. The kernels originally have been used to balance the blinding factor. So if I send you funds, right, I have my secret key, you have your secret key. So there is a difference between them. This difference needs to be balanced out because that's how the validity of the blockchain is verified, that everything sums to zero, that there is no illegal emission, there are no money that disappears into nowhere, that all of the inputs, summed with all of the outputs equal exactly zero as they should, except for the emission of the protocol, of course. So whenever you are creating a MimbleWimble transaction, there are several interesting things that happen. First of all, there are absolutely no addresses whatsoever. This was one of the unique properties of MimbleWimble. Yes, you pay for that with interactivity. You need both the sender and the receiver to sign. But once the transaction goes on chain, there are no addresses stored at all, right? So if you take a look at historically and you try to analyze the MimbleWimble blockchain going kind of historically back, you will not be able to extract the identity information because it's simply not there, which is a huge benefit for privacy. And all of the values are encrypted, and you don't need to store the intermediate UTXOs, because let's say I send a UTXO to you and you send it to somebody else. What matters for the protocol is when that UTXO was created, which is the emission of the block, and who holds it right now. All the rest of the information can be safely discarded. It doesn't mean that it's not, or it was not recorded by some node that was kind of tracking all the history throughout the blockchain progress, but whenever a new node is connected, it only needs to download and parse minimal amount of information, basically all of the headers of the blocks and the current state of the UTXO set, which makes onboarding new nodes much faster. In fact, every Beam wallet, like the desktop one that you have installed, has a built-in node inside of it, which makes it better for, obviously decentralization, processing transactions, and also your security, because you're working with your own node inside your wallet. So I think even today, like when we're talking about simple MimbleWimble transactions, they have a very good size compared to Monero and definitely to Zcash.
Yeah, that's definitely interesting. I think the selling point for MimbleWimble is the fact that transactions are pruned. It's something that is very hard to figure out in Bitcoin, where everything from every transaction is stored permanently. But think about all of that information getting dropped after a few blocks, because MimbleWimble blocks look, I think, so correct me if I'm wrong, you only have the input and the output of the block after the pruning. It doesn't really matter what happens in the middle. It's all about the amounts and being sure that there is no inflation that happened.
Yeah, so whenever the node tries to analyze the blockchain, it only needs to see all the headers and all the kernels and the current UTXO set, yes, in order to validate that the chain is completely correct and nothing is missing.
Yeah, I remember this, and to most people, and it's really unfortunate, at least in the Bitcoin field, when you see MimbleWimble, people will think about the MimbleWimble coin. It's a project that was launched by Trace Mayer. Not launched, maybe promoted just. It was in early 2020 that this was being shilled. And people remember that, and they will show you some price chart and say, this 100% pre-mined coin was a scam and blah, 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 and MimbleWimble sucks. And if they're slightly better informed, they will point out to an article posted in 2019, which claimed to have de-anonymized 90% of
96%.
96% of Grin transactions. So
yes,
to a lot of people, MimbleWimble is either a scam because of MimbleWimble coin, or something that is not really private because of that incident with Grin. So how do you respond to these allegations?
Yeah. Well, MimbleWimble has a very interesting history in general. First of all, it was published anonymously, as we said, which is, I think, fascinating in our days, that it's still possible to do anything like so anonymously, that even after all these years, whether Satoshi or the original author of the MimbleWimble paper are not known till this day. I think it's amazing that we still have that. And Grin was the first project that started implementing this idea. And Grin was actually not trying to compete with anyone. It was a completely kind of community-driven, not funded by anyone. They had some donations, but they didn't raise any money, and they didn't have any kind of goals to compete with Bitcoin for sure. I think most of the original Grin team were huge Bitcoin fans, maximalists, holders, etc. And I think it was most about eventually trying to bring this privacy back to Bitcoin as soon as possible. So they did a lot of work between 2017 when they started and 2018 when we kind of joined. I think Guy tried to talk to them back in the day, but he eventually got tired from kind of the progress, and then he said, "You know what? I'll build Beam." with my friends and do it myself. Beam is actually originally coming from a play on Grin, because Grin is this kind of smile, and like Beam is kind of the wider smile. But then obviously it took on all of the connotations with the beam and light and all that. But that was kind of the original idea. And Grin did a huge amount of work in kind of proving the technical possibility of implementing a MimbleWimble protocol. Even though we didn't take any code directly, because as you said, we used a different technology, we did rely on kind of the fact that they managed to do it, and it motivated us to build our own version. When we started working on that, we kind of looked obviously at all the challenges that we had there. We started with the most plain vanilla version, right? So we kind of implemented the most basic, direct, straightforward white paper description of MimbleWimble. And that was what essentially was launched in January 2019. And Grin launched a couple of weeks after us. Because of the fact that Grin was the industry kind of favorite in terms of like, here is the proper kind of complete open source, non-funded project. And we were VC funded, and we didn't open our source until like 6 months into the development. So we went through the first phase of, being called a scam. We were called Shitwimble. We were called, scammers trying to hijack, and it took us some time to, first of all, open the source code and prove that we are doing serious work here. And eventually, after a while, I think we did manage to convince that we are for real. So that was the first kind of, the first, for me, it was the first pure open source project that I worked at, and for most of the team as well. So it was very different from working in a company. The immediacy of it, the working with the community, getting feedback directly in your face on Twitter, on everything you do. It was very new for us. When we launched, there were a lot of discussions, and then we got to the Ivan Bogatyy incident, as we call it. And what happened there was that this article had a huge impact, which I, being very young and inexperienced in this specific field, I have completely underestimated the impact that this article would have. I will explain in a second what it says and what is like true and what is not. But in general, we read it obviously, and we said, yeah, whatever. Like we didn't address it properly, right? I said, okay, nobody is going to really because of that, believe that MimbleWimble is not private. But no, that's not what happened. A huge amount of people after this article just turned their back on MimbleWimble and stopped following both projects, Grin, ourselves, and kind of just took basically the title of the article, right? The 96% is a very impressive figure. So what really happened there? The article talks about a real problem in MimbleWimble protocol, and the problem is the traceability of UTXOs. The UTXO graph is out there. You don't need to do too much effort to see it. You just have to run an archive node. You get all of the transactions, and it does allow a specific attack. It allows the attack on being able to probabilistically deduce relation between two wallets. So let's say you want, someone, right? And you want to figure out whether this someone is talking to some specific wallet. So you send them a lot of UTXOs, you send them a lot of transactions as an active attacker, and then you're tracing which part of these UTXOs and in the other wallet that you are trying to prove relation to or connection to. And once you do this for a long period of time, you can say, yes, with high probability, these two wallets communicate. They send funds from one another. It does not, and the article says that it does not allow you to see the value of these transactions because it's encrypted. And it does not allow you to directly determine their identity. Unlike, if this person also uses a centralized exchange, and maybe you can do it, but not out of this like specific protocol attack. So yes, the problem is real. However, the way the article presented this problem is hugely exaggerated, I would say, in terms of the like how easy it is to attack and how severe this attack is. Now, we did obviously publish some rebuttals and explanations of several things. So first of all, in Beam, there are several additional mechanisms that did not exist in Grin at that time that complicate this type of attack. The first one is that like both Beam and Grin are using Dandelion, which is the protocol of obfuscating the transaction source. The way it works basically is that whenever the transaction is sent, before it's broadcast to every node peer, it's first sent through the stem phase. And in the stem phase, it's randomly sent to specific peers. So you have this kind of a picture of the transaction going through several nodes before exploding into like the broadcast of every other known node. And this obfuscates the origin of the transaction. It was originally developed by Giulia Fanti for Bitcoin and obfuscating the IP addresses, but it was adopted in both Beam and Grin. In Beam, we have added an additional complication to this mechanism that merges all of the transactions along the stem phase into one kind of block using one of the properties of MimbleWimble, that you have this kind of scalar value that you are just adding, and then when the node receives the transaction after several kind of steps of the stem phase, it can no longer distinguish between separate parts of it. So you cannot say these UTXOs are from this transaction and these are from this transaction. It's all kind of blended, merged together, and it cannot be undone because it's just added scalar number. You cannot refactor it back. The second mechanism that we added in the same kind of protocol, we have also added decoy inputs and outputs that are created by the nodes themselves in case there is low traffic, right? So if you don't have enough transactions to mix together through this stem phase, you're adding these decoy inputs and outputs. They have zero value, and they're later at some left lying around in the blockchain. Rather, they are removed and cut through eventually. But what they create is that if you don't have a lot of traffic, so there are few transactions to mix with, they kind of create these decoys. So both of these mechanisms, they improve the situation. However, they do not solve it completely. And that's when we have been starting looking to for more powerful technological solution, and that's how we found Lelantus and integrated it as well.
Right. So to cut it short, basically you added Lelantus, which is a different privacy protocol, on top of MimbleWimble to overcome the shortcomings of the original design.
Yes. To cut it short, we did that in order to complete, even though this attack might not be as severe and as catastrophic as it was presented in the article, it still was an issue that we wanted to resolve. And we have added Lelantus to solve that.
That's very interesting. I really want to take a look at the client, at the Beam wallet, the full node wallet, which I downloaded last night and synchronized it. But before that, I'm going to present a couple of advertisements. First of all, the newcomer, Bitcoin.com news. You go to news.bitcoin.com right now, and you're going to find some news articles that you don't really find on other Bitcoin news websites, like banks run out of gold in China as retail investors seek cover from macro conditions. You don't hear too much about the gold market on other news websites from the space. And there's also something which I found interesting, and I read it this morning, about the meme coin that was launched by the Central African Republic. To me, that was very interesting because the Central African Republic used to be on the Bitcoin standard. They became the second nation in the world to accept Bitcoin as legal tender. And then they stopped, and now they launched their own meme coin. And I was curious to see what's going on. So I found this on news.bitcoin.com. I guess the domain carries a certain stigma from the block size wars. People remember it as the website that was claiming that Bitcoin Cash is the real Bitcoin. But I used to work in journalism and I used to write for Crypto Insider and Bitcoin Magazine. And I know good journalism when I see it. So it's a shame that these guys, that's why I reached out to them. I saw some articles and I said, let me just promote this and help you clean your image a bit because this is underrated. You deserve more clicks, more attention. So check it out, news.bitcoin.com. You're going to find a lot of news that maybe are overlooked or not covered in other places. And also, I got to tell you about which one should I pick first? Let's start with SideShift. SideShift is the place where you go and you swap whatever you have for whatever you want. So if someone offers to pay you in stable coins and you know that we're in the middle of a bull market, then it's a no-brainer. You don't want to hold on to stable coins. So you go to sideshift.ai, you basically send your stable coins and you're going to get Bitcoin, you're going to get Ethereum, Litecoin, whatever it is that you want. Let me check very fast to see if they support Beam, but I think they removed everything related to privacy because of regulation issues. But I'm going to check nonetheless. No, they don't. But maybe they should add it because it's really interesting. Anyway, sideshift.ai, they have very good liquidity and also they have pretty low fees. Check it out. Now, let's put this on the screen. If you check the YouTube version, you're not going to see this in our call window, but I have the full node wallet on the screen right now. And I'm taking a look at the various features that we can find here. There's a Beam NFT gallery right in the middle, a DEX, a voting, BeamX DAO voting. So I guess this is for protocol upgrades or something. BeamX DAO. And I have to ask you also, what is BeamX and how is it different from Beam? There's a name service.
Sure.
There's a bridges app. There's a bridge to Ethereum. And then asset minter. And these are all in the middle. It seems like you moved into some smart contract Ethereum stuff, which I haven't seen
Right.
in Grin.
Yeah, so what happened is that the first kind of very impressive feature that we developed by this feature, and the atomic swaps is amazing because you don't need a third party, you don't need to trust anyone. I can send you Bitcoin, you can send me Beam in exchange without us having to trust anyone. And that was kind of one of the first features that we have built using these MimbleWimble extensions. And then we said, wait a second, we have this very powerful mechanism. Why don't we extend it even further? And while we were working on the Lelantus integration, which also uses the kernel extensions, we said we can put it's a native property of the blockchain. By taking a new generator point, you can Beam and just create a new coin, which will be as confidential as Beam itself. It will go through all of the same processes of cut through and everything, but it will be a completely different coin. And these coins can be created either by the wallets or by the smart contracts inside the Beam applications, right? So if you want to trade these coins, you can go into the Beam DEX and trade two confidential coins completely confidentially on top of the chain. In order to avoid dependency with a website, because there's a lot of censorship going on in front ends, right? Like Uniswap or whatever. We have also implemented all of the applications in a way that they're run inside the wallet. So it's completely local to you. You don't need to go to any website to launch an application. And even more, we have created a decentralized application store. So the application is being distributed through IPFS integration and a smart contract on-chain that allows you to register application and your users to discover it. And you can do it anonymously. So in Beam, you can not only use applications anonymously, you can also distribute applications completely anonymously, which do you want me to talk more about the applications? Because I have a few additional important ones to mention.
Yeah, sure. Go ahead. Right now I'm showing on the screen. So I was in the DEX. I also tried to create a new liquidity swapping pair, but I need to pay a transaction fee and I didn't have enough coins. I did see that you have your own BBTC, which is, I guess, Beam wrapped Bitcoin. that you can use within your ecosystem. And now I'm looking at the NFT gallery, which I don't know. I was never into NFTs too much. I don't get this.
In this case, I think we can talk about Nephrite, which is the
Ifrit?
stable coin. Yeah. If you
Isn't
don't
that
see it in the original
an
store,
Aeon from Final
yeah,
Fantasy?
might be, but it's also a confidential stable coin on Beam.
Okay.
So I think Nephrite
How do you type that?
is a very interesting. I'm sorry,
How do
Nephrite, Nephrite, maybe it's pronounced.
I'm searching for it in the deck. So NEPH.
It's NPH for the ticker.
And what's the network effect for it? Like, what can you actually do? You have this confidential stablecoin that I guess is useful when it is volatile. But after you do this, what can you actually do with the NPH tokens? Can you spend them somewhere, or do you have to swap them back to something that is more liquid?
So, as far as I know, I don't think there are any services that directly accept Nephrite because it's fairly new and small. But yes, you can definitely use it in DeFi trading to, go into stable, like when there is volatility or any other situation that you need flight to safety. But once again, like in terms of the applications, the idea was to have the same concept, as the stable on Ethereum or any other blockchain, and combine it with confidentiality.
There are at least a couple of other projects that aim to do the same. I've had Amir Taki, who's building DarkFi, and he's using Halo 2 for that, which is Zcash technology. And he aims to do basically the same, to wrap other assets and enable a private way to transact them. And there's also Zano, which is using Monero technology, which is ring signatures, and they also want to move to full chain membership proofs whenever that happens on Monero. And I was going to ask you, how would you compare the free protocols? You have one that's using MimbleWimble, one that's using Monero tech, and one that's using Zcash tech. And they try to accomplish the same goal.
But by the way, you are breaking up a little bit. I wonder if you run the Beam wallet on the same machine that you are streaming from, or maybe something is eating the bandwidth, because every once in a while there is like small freezes that were not there before.
By breaking up, you mean the audio?
No, the video is getting a bit freezy, but it might be nothing.
I'm not sure what's happening. So the audio is fine.
All right. Yeah, the audio was fine.
That's what I mostly care about.
Gotcha. So in terms of the comparison, well, interestingly enough, like when we're talking about zero knowledge, right? It's definitely the most powerful technology in terms of having infinite anonymity set, right? Infinite as in the entirety of the blockchain is your anonymity set. The anonymity set is actually one of the most important parameters when you are talking about privacy of the protocol, right? So let's talk about Monero, Zcash as zero knowledge, and Monero and the MimbleWimble Lelantus combination. So the anonymity set is like in Monero, it's basically fixed. You have 11 rings, like 11 signatures in the ring, and then each UTXO you look at can be signed by one of the potential decoy signers that are there. Zcash, they say whenever you are creating a UTXO, you're saying this could have spent any one of the previous UTXOs in the blockchain. So you have theoretically the best anonymity set. And in MimbleWimble and Lelantus, when we're talking about the Lelantus shielded pool, it's capped at 64,000. Kind of when you are getting a new UTXO out of the shielded pool, you also add the proof that it can be any one of the 64,000 window of UTXOs that were put there, right? So that's kind of the comparison in theory. And by that rationale, I think if you take, I don't know, the pirate chain, which has basically like Zcash without any open transactions, like it's the best idea. But everything has some kind of trade-offs, right? In terms of how much time it takes to create these proofs and calculate them and verify them, right? So there are some trade-offs.
So sorry for interrupting. My girlfriend was asking why I don't have a happy face.
I see. No, I think the connection is fine now. So kind of to not to go too deep into that. If you you can use any of these technologies to get very good results for privacy, right? Monero, Zcash, like no Zcash, like ZK technology, or MimbleWimble Lelantus combination. In practice, I think all of them give solid privacy results. ZK is best if you take it to the extreme, right? But you have also additional things to consider. And the first and foremost is OPSEC, right? If you are into privacy, you also need, doesn't matter which technology you're using, you need to know what you're doing and be careful. It's very, very probable that your privacy will be, kind of lessened or breached, not because of the protocol design, but rather because of your behavior and how you do things. And it's important to get education on that. Also, when we're talking about anonymity set, like obviously when you're spending UTXO, it's not going to be probably like the probability of spending a more recent UTXO is higher. So if you're using any one of these technologies and you're immediately spending the coins that you're getting all the time, you kind of weaken your effective anonymity set, right? You need to wait until you spend them. In Beam, we optimize for that inside the wallet. So the wallet itself is trying to spend your UTXOs in a way that optimizes your anonymity set. But if you're doing this manually, you should be aware of this, no matter which design you're using.
That's interesting, but at the end of the day, for the average user, which one do you think is more user-friendly, more convenient to use right now?
I didn't have a lot of experience using Zeno or other solutions. Like I think Monero is doing a great job across the board for everything, starting from privacy and also the community and everything else. In Beam, we did a lot of hard work trying to make it as usable as possible. We have created a lot of additional systems like SBBS that send messages between the wallets to allow to create interactive transactions as seamlessly as possible. And we have also invested a lot in making the wallets themselves beautiful and easy to use. Sometimes we succeeded more, sometimes it was still difficult, especially with different transaction types and kind of understanding what's going on. So, I mean, I still think that everybody has more room to improve, right? Crypto is still not the best in usability yet, but it's getting there. But it's difficult for me to compare.
Yeah, I'm looking at the wallet right now and I'm trying stuff like BMX DAO voting. I don't have any tokens to vote, but I'm just trying to understand how it works. It's basically a proof of stake system where one coin is one vote, right?
Not exactly. So the BeamX was created several years ago in order to become a token of the DAO, of the BeamX DAO, which controls the Beam ecosystem and the various applications. And it is used for voting, but so far until like now, it's not used for staking. Even though there was a staking campaign at the beginning of the launch, but it's no longer active. The idea was that you can vote on chain for various decisions regarding the protocol. However, recently we have started talking about adding an L2 to Beam, which will be faster, and it will use BeamX for staking, and it will be based on the proof of stake, yes. But this is like very new effort that was only announced several weeks ago, and it's still very work in progress.
Okay. Obviously, this is very inspired by Ethereum, but it's more private than Ethereum is. So my next question for you is, why is this not as popular as Ethereum or Solana, given that it has privacy features that users actually want? But before you answer, let me plug two more sponsors. The two sponsors that I'm going to tell you about present two different visions of Bitcoin. On one hand, you have Layer 2 Labs that's building two-way pegged sidechains. They're called drive chains. They're described by BIPs 300 and 301. And they're trying to bring basically every use case, including maybe MimbleWimble, on a Bitcoin sidechain. And to find out more about that, you don't have to read debates, you don't have to go through documentation, you don't have to philosophize about what this means. You can actually run the software. So you go to layer2labs/download. You're going to find clients for a Zcash sidechain, for an Ethereum sidechain, for a big block Bitcoin sidechain, for a prediction market sidechain. And you can download all of these and see how they interact and get some coins from a faucet on the testnet and transact between them, lock them, and basically discover all the features. And you're going to find that on layer2labs.com/download. This can be the future of Bitcoin if you want it. And it's good to test it and know exactly what this is about. And another future for Bitcoin can be that of ZK rollups. There is Citrea, which is the company that basically created the first ZK rollup on Bitcoin. And right now, they're trying to bring financial services such as DeFi lending and issuing stable coins against your Bitcoins and doing what a lot of people used to do in the previous cycle with BlockFi, but not through a company, but on a protocol that you can verify is open source and is much more transparent. It's not going to rug you as long as you respect exactly the rules that you signed with your coins. So check that out. They also have their project on the Bitcoin Signet, if I'm not mistaken. And you can download the wallet, you can interact with it, you can see the features and possibly the future of Bitcoin in that one. So check out Citrea. They're very cool, and thank you for sponsoring this podcast. Now back to the question, why isn't this technology more popular? And why is stuff like Ethereum or Solana the one that gets all the meme coins and it's not happening on Beam?
So the story of privacy in general in blockchain, I think it's very interesting. And as a kind of amateur sociologist and a fan of this field, I think it would be interesting to write some books about it one day, because Bitcoin was considered private in the beginning, right? It was hugely promoted. If you look like old TV shows, they say, here's Bitcoin, it's absolutely untraceable. These criminals, they use Bitcoin for traceability. And obviously at some point it was discovered that that's not the case, even though it's pseudonymous in terms of nobody knows immediately when you create a new address who you are. It's very, very traceable. And obviously, since everything is kept in the blockchain for eternity, it can be analyzed and historically figured out at some point, and then can be tracked through the UTXOs. And that's how it started for privacy. Also, as we all know, Bitcoin and other crypto was initially kind of the rebels, I would say, right? Kind of changing the system. And today it's also something that is kind of changing as Bitcoin being adopted by more institutionals and banks and whatnot, ETFs. And so the story of privacy was kind of, it started from this whole cypherpunk and, rebellious origins. But then as crypto evolved, it went into two directions. So the first direction is more of a gambling, right? So what's happening on Solana, the launch of the meme coins. And these traders, I would call them, do not necessarily need privacy or are interested in privacy. They just want to have something very easy to use, fast, and make money out of it, hopefully. And the second kind of direction of a more, I would say, enterprise-oriented or commercial uses of blockchain went into private blockchains in terms of like non-public blockchains, right? Blockchains that are inside JP Morgan and other banks. And so the privacy became this feature that everybody says they want, but like not really, right? People are trading on Ethereum. They don't really care about, for now at least, about anyone being able to trace their transactions. And since that happened, despite working on privacy solutions for all these years, I still think it's very kind of strange situation. Everybody says they want something, but nobody really wants to, or like tries to get to it in a way. If you understand what I'm trying to say here.
Yeah, right now Ethereum is trying to get privacy with ZK rollups, but it's very clunky. It's not fully baked in right now. And it's going backwards, right? Because they started from this open ledger and they're trying to give some privacy, whereas Beam or other projects like it, they started from the idea of having privacy and they figured out everything from there. Like, how can we add extra features?
Yes, exactly. So we started with privacy of value transactions, and then we try to expand it into decentralized applications. And right now we're working on the Beam Warp, which is an L2 that will provide kind of the same idea, but with EVM integration, because right now, as I said, Beam Virtual Machine is difficult to develop for and requires special knowledge, while there are a lot of Solidity developers out there. So we're trying to bring them into the privacy world as well. And also we will have delegated proof of stake with very fast finality in order to compete with speeds of Solana and others. So yeah, like Beam itself is going to be forever proof of work, very solid fundamentals. We believe proof of work is still the king. But when you want to have fast DeFi transactions, obviously you need to be able to complete them in seconds and not minutes, right? That's kind of the standards of today. So we're trying to combine the best of two worlds here with a native bridge that will allow you to move assets completely confidentially from Beam to Beam Warp, the L2 that we're working on. But still, I mean, yeah, the ZK rollups is a great idea, but once again, like you need to make sure that your sequencer is well protected, that it's not centralized. I think Beam is a very good solution for when you take the combination of features, what you can achieve. I think Beam can solve many issues in DeFi privacy today, and we're still working to improve that. The question is who are the potential users, like who really needs privacy, not say they need it, but really need it in the DeFi world.
Well, there are a bunch of people who are not happy that all of their transactions are traceable on some blockchain. I think Roger Ver is a good situation to present because they came for him about 10 years later. After he exited the US, he renounced citizenship, but there was still some evidence that was left on chain about his transactions and the fact that he sold some coins to, I think, Kraken or something. I guess I should interview him about this to get more details. Roger, if you're listening, join the show. Anyway, it's a situation where right now he's talking about privacy and he wishes he had this kind of privacy when he first started. And maybe that privacy is always an afterthought. You don't think you need it until something bad actually happens and you realize, okay, this was a bad design, it was a bad idea. I didn't care at the time. I didn't think too much about leaving evidence on a permanent ledger. And now it's all coming back because with AI and with blockchain analysis, it's only going to get worse. And there's going to be linking between UTXOs and transactions and wallets, and especially with the account-based blockchains, it's horrible.
I agree, and in general, it's like more of a kind of social shift that needs to happen, right? Just like you lock your door when you go out of the house, right? Automatically, you don't think about it, and like it provides you with some privacy, and it's something that you do. That's kind of the same idea. It needs to be more ingrained into your on-chain behavior. But The problem with that is that there's not enough education about this. People don't really understand what they're doing, mostly when they are going on chain, like what it means, what kind of record it keeps about them for eternity. So yeah, that's one of the things that we're always trying to talk about as much as we can, and kind of educate on the subjects of blockchains and privacy and what it means, for sure. And I think it's still very, very in the early stages of understanding. The technology moves very fast and the society cannot keep up.
How would you compare Beam and Grin today? Because they were very similar 5 years ago when they launched, but they forked. Maybe it's a bad verb to say forked, but they diverged very much. They took different paths. Grin is still trying to be a pure form of money with an issuance of 60 coins per minute. It's aimed at payments. It's very obvious what it's trying to do. It's trying to be a fair currency with no early adopter advantage, and it's trying to solve privacy also. But Beam right now is trying to be the private Ethereum, and one that also
Yes.
scales because it's prunable. MimbleWimble is a much better design than what Ethereum came up with. But what would you say are the other differences?
Well, yes. So as you mentioned, there are differences in the original protocol design. We have capped emission, right? Deflationary model. Beam has kind of inflationary 60 green per minute. That's one of the differences. There are several small underlying technological differences. Like we have added Lelantus to solve the original MimbleWimble transaction graph problem. They have not. But in terms of the goals and the direction, yes, we are trying to go more and more into decentralized applications and DeFi. But I want to give you one example of something interesting that we have done a couple of years ago as a proof of concept. We have implemented a decentralized GitHub on Beam. And it was mentioned, I think Amir Taki mentioned it in an interview with you about Radical, which is another protocol that is doing this, decentralized Git repositories. So what we have done in Beam, because we have IPFS integration and smart contracts, we have actually built a system where you can write your code and commit it in a completely anonymous way through the smart contract and IPFS integration. This project is called Source. It's written like SOURC and then 3 as a number. It's open source. The GitHub is still up there and available for anyone to take a look at. And then you remember there were a lot of attacks on developers, Bitcoin developers and other developers. And then there was a question like, how can you contribute code to an open source project anonymously? And turned out it's not very simple. You have to really manage your identities, create Proton Mail, go into GitHub, register with different name or different projects. So Beam takes care of all Beam, I mean, as a technology, takes care of that because you have already a blockchain with privacy built in. You have the smart contracts, so you can kind of choose. You can have a new identity for each commit if you want, right? Very flexible design. So we built that POC. We tried to raise funds for that. Nobody wanted to back it, but it's still out there. It worked well. From the developer perspective, by the way, it integrates seamlessly into existing developer tools. So like you just are doing the commit. And since in Beam, we have an option to subsidize transaction fees from the contract, like the contract can pay for your transaction. So it was very useful for this feature, right? Because it's like, you swipe your card or like you send some money into the contract and then your developers can use it without having to confirm transactions or pay for their each action.
I was going to ask you, is there any feature that Ethereum has and Beam doesn't, or something that Beam cannot do, or at least not yet?
No, the Beam has a fully Turing complete smart contracts. Like the integration like with smart contracts is implemented through this kind of hybrid UTXO to account-based approach, where we start with the UTXO transaction and then UTXO is consumed by the smart contract and set into the account and vice versa. So in terms of the applications that you can build, anything you can build on Ethereum, you can build on Beam as well.
I see that there are three main buttons in the wallet interface. There's send, which is very straightforward. You paste an address and you choose the amount, and you can also write a comment.
Yeah.
And this is something else that I'm going to ask you about with comments and messaging, but let's get there. There's also receive, which once again is the same, like you would expect from a Bitcoin wallet, but there's also swap. And in swap, you have two types of swaps. You have atomic swaps and asset swaps. And I was going to ask you, what's the difference between these two?
Yeah, so the asset swap is the internal kind of OTC marketplace that we have developed. So let's say you want to buy OTC, some amount of asset on Beam. So you can publish an offer either to buy or to sell a specific asset. And then if somebody has this amount of asset to offer you, they accept your offer, and then the transaction is created between the two wallets inside the Beam marketplace. So it's kind of a decentralized marketplace. It's based on SBBS. The SBBS, as I said, is a messaging system that runs between wallets. It's used to sign transactions, but to create transactions in MimbleWimble, but we expanded it to also be able to send offers for asset swaps and atomic swaps. What is nice about the asset swap that it's one transaction. Within the single transaction, I send assets to you, you send assets to me, and immediately the asset swap is complete.
Yeah, this is really cool. I see that in the atomic swap interface, you have your Beam node, mine synced 100%, and you can connect your IPFS, your Litecoin node, your QTUM, I'm not sure how you pronounce this one, Dogecoin, Dash, Ethereum. There is also, Bitcoin here. So for your swaps, you can swap Beam for Bitcoin natively, right?
Yes.
And how does this work? Like, there has to be someone on the other side who's online and puts up their Bitcoin liquidity?
Yeah, so they don't have to necessarily be like online in the same second. We have, I think, something like 12 hours lifetime for the SBBS message. But yes, they have to be online in proximity. However, it's probably going to be the case anyway, because when you're making a transaction, you don't want necessarily to stretch too far in the future because prices change and you might want to change the conditions. So the idea is that the atomic swap design allows you to lock, if you are the sender of Bitcoin, lock Bitcoin on Bitcoin chain, and then whoever sends Beam locks Beam on Beam chain. And then there is a protocol that allows to securely exchange secrets, and then whoever receives the Bitcoin unlocks it and gets it on Bitcoin side, and the same happens on the Beam side. So that's how it works. So yeah, you need to have a counterparty with you on that. Doesn't need to be like live, but it probably should happen within 12 hours.
Right, and for asset swaps, you are basically swapping native assets for the Beam blockchain, right?
Yes, you can swap any two assets on the Beam blockchain, and it's immediate. It's like one transaction created and instantly sent into the block.
My next question for you is just how decentralized is Beam right now? Let's say that a meteor is going to hit every developer or something tomorrow. God forbid that happens, but let's say that something horrible like this is going to happen. Is there a large enough community to take over the project, maintain it, and keep on developing it? Or let me be less dramatic. Let's say that the funding gets cut off and there's not going to be any more money in this project. Nobody gets paid anymore.
Yeah, that's easy to answer. The project will continue, and the way I know this, there is no money in this project for a long time already. So nobody is getting paid, and it's fine. So that's something that we have managed to overcome. The project is alive and continues development with none or very little funding. So that's not a problem. We did make everything we built open source, and we are trying to kind of promote and attract developers. We have a few, and it actually depends. So let's say you have a meteor that hits just Beam developers at the same time. I think it will create enough of a hero factor. And then a lot of developers from other projects will jump in and say, yes, these developers were hit by the meteor for a good reason, and then Beam will succeed. Yeah, probably not a bad marketing strategy.
That's a good way to spin a tragedy. But I hope you're right. I hope that this project is going to be continued. I want to ask you about the messaging layer that's embedded in the wallet. But before that, let me present two more sponsors. First of all, we have noonce.com. It's a marketplace where you go and you transact mostly digital assets with the global south. If you want to help people from Africa or people from the Middle East who are cut out from the mainstream financial system, they have no bank accounts, but they want to participate in the global economy, then you can go to Noonce. You can take your cuts for selling, and then the people buying from you will most likely sell to the local market. There are a bunch of people from Nigeria and other countries who are using Noonce, and it's a good way for you to do business and also enable other businesses to thrive. So check it out. Mostly, I think there's a very liquid market for gift cards and codes for various platforms like Steam or other video game gift cards and whatever. So if you have something to sell like this, then go to Noonce and you're gonna find most likely a party who's gonna trade with you. Very nice liquidity, nice community. Check it out. And last but not least, there is hodling.ch. If you hold a lot of coins and you don't know how to secure them on the long term, or you're part of a company that plans to buy Bitcoin, then you should reach out to these guys because they're going to help you figure out some of the problems that you encounter along the way, like setting up a multi-sig or using hardware wallets, having a quorum that prevents a couple of guys from spending all of the company's coins, or having just the right secure setup that makes sure that your keys are not entirely stored in your house, but also stored outside in a place that's safe. It's a complicated matter, but if you want to figure out exactly what's the best solution for yourself, because there is no one size fits all type of solution for this, then reach out to these guys, hodling.ch. They're based in Switzerland. You benefit from the Swiss privacy when you're dealing with them. And you can also listen to some free advice from them in the previous season of the Bitcoin Takeover podcast. Their names are Polto and Darko. Check that out, and they will give you some free advice on how to improve your self-custody game. So thank you very much for sitting through my ads. And now let's get to the part that I found very interesting after I installed the wallet client. There's a Beam Messenger. And once you go here, you click new chat and you send the message from your address to another address. And I guess in the name, you actually type the message that you want to send. Is this stored on chain, or how does this work?
No. Okay. So first of all, the word address here is a little bit misleading, but we really tried very hard to find a different word, and we kind of always came up with something even less clear. Usually address means something on chain, right? Like the address on chain for your wallet. But in this case, the address is completely off chain, and it's related to this messaging system that we have. The messaging system is implemented using distributed hash tables. So basically each node holds a copy of these messages. And the way it works is that your wallet takes a bunch of messages, a channel, and then decrypts. Since all the messages are encrypted for inside this channel, it only decrypts those that are addressed to it. And this way there is no kind of ability to detect who consumed which messages, which is best for privacy. It started as a necessity that we had to create interactive MimbleWimble transactions. And then we slowly expanded it to the marketplace, the asset swap, and to the messenger. The messenger is very, proof of concept-ish. It's so basic. We didn't really make a product out of it. It was just kind of a tech preview feature inside the wallet, barely usable. But what it does, it encrypts a message and sends it through this SBBS system to everyone. The address is your kind of internal SBBS address, which is temporary. You can create a new address every time. Or you have one, like if you're talking with somebody on a constant basis, like all day, then you have just keep this one address around to talking to this person. But it is in no way reflected on the blockchain.
It's interesting to me that you can basically send messages using this and there's no monetary cost. It's part of the peer-to-peer network. So I guess you have to run a node to be able to send these messages. They're broadcast, they're encrypted. And I was going to ask you, are these just as private as something like Signal?
I don't know how exactly the details about Signal. It's a different concept. I think Signal uses like end-to-end encryption with a centralized server. These are completely decentralized. They're sent just like transactions. They're broadcasted through the network. They do have a small proof of work component that you need to calculate because otherwise you could easily spam the system. But other than that, it's peer-to-peer, basically. It's decentralized. I think Signal uses centralized service with end-to-end encryption.
Oh, this is beautiful. I think more wallets should have something like this. In Bitcoin, you have a verify message feature that I guess works in a similar way. I'm not sure how encrypted that is. But this is very nice. It's a very underrated feature, I guess, in protocols. I think Zcash has something similar, but when you send transactions, you can also attach a message that's going to get encrypted.
Yeah. So the comment that you saw in the send screen, it's actually local. It's not broadcast anywhere. It's stored for your eyes only, locally in the wallet. Just, let's say you pay somebody and you just want to remember what the transaction was about. So it's kind of the local feature, but we did have a lot of designs. Not all of them are implemented for the ability, for example, to add documents to a transaction, right? You want to send an invoice, you want to send a contract, right? Since you are already in the wallet and you have your keys there and you can sign anything easily, it makes a lot of sense in terms of practical, transactions for businesses to have this ability to attach documents and sign them. And interestingly, the interactivity feature helps us in here because in Bitcoin, you send, to somebody, they don't know that you sent it. They just, money appears in their address at some point in time. They cannot say no. They cannot say, no, I don't want that. They can send it back, but they cannot not accept it. In Beam, when we're using MimbleWimble transactions, because of this negotiation process and signing of both sides, you can say, I'm sorry, I will require you to please add this document, or I'm not going to accept your transaction because, for practical reasons, if I want to be auditable or I want to be a business that reports, pays taxes and reports their profits, that's also possible with confidentiality. And this is kind of an amazing thing for me you see a lot of institutions or kind of more and more organizations using blockchain these days. But if you check how they do it, they mostly do all of the transactions off-chain, right? They kind of hold these funds somewhere and then they transact off-chain because they understand that when they transact on-chain, just like with MicroStrategy or whatever, like everybody can see, oh, this organization just bought this and this amount, or they sold, or they're trading with that one. And you have amazing platforms like Arkham Intelligence that you can just enter the address on Ethereum and know exactly everything this person has ever bought or traded, which other addresses are connected to it. You can analyze their portfolio. You can front run them, which is a big problem in DeFi, which doesn't exist on Beam because you don't know who this person is making a trade. You cannot know who the Beam whales are. There is no Beam whale wall. And there can never be an account on Twitter which says, whale alert, somebody just sent a gazillion Ethereum to Binance. I think all of these are good things for privacy and in long term in general.
I gotta ask you, was my volume low all along, or did you hear me fine? It seems like some people in the chat say that I was too low.
I heard you fine, but...
yeah, anyway, I was going to ask you, there's this feature in the wallet in the Receive tab. You can go to the advanced part of the menu and you can enable maximum anonymity set. And I was going to ask you, what is this about? I see that the address is changing. It says that the transaction can last at most 72 hours. Minimum transaction fee 0.01 Beam. For the other one, there is no such mention. So
Yeah,
what is this about? Is this really enabling the privacy and the other one is more transparent, or how does it work?
I will explain. So this has to do with the design of how Lelantus works. The way Lelantus works is you have a shielded pool, and the user puts UTXO into the pool, waits for some time for the anonymity set to accumulate, like basically more things happen in the pool, and then takes out a completely new UTXO, completely unlinked from the previous one they put in, and there is a proof that it's the same value, right? That's how the Lelantus protocol operates. Now, when you are sending someone funds through the Lelantus pool, what happens is that you put in the UTXO, but it's for someone, and somebody else takes out this UTXO, right? The new one. And that's how the transactions through a Lelantus pool works. There is a problem here, because if you want to have like enough anonymity set to accumulate, you are kind of trusting the other person to do that, right? You have put your UTXO into the pool for them, but they are responsible for taking it out at a certain period of time. And if they're constantly doing it too quickly, right, like immediately the second you put the UTXO in, they take it out, they kind of affect your effective anonymity set. Because if somebody knows that they're doing it, like it means that they don't need to look at all UTXOs or like more UTXOs. They can just say, oh, I know this person takes the UTXO out immediately, so I just need to review the set of the last, I don't know, 10 UTXOs, 20, 100, and they can attack you this way.
I see that.
So,
okay,
yeah.
Sorry, go ahead.
So what the max privacy mode does, it says, I am going to instruct the receiver wallet in this transaction not to take out this UTXO until one of two things happen. Either the desired anonymity set is achieved, or 72 hours pass. So it's kind of a meta instruction for the receiver wallet that the sender really wants to be private, and please wait until you take this money out.
That's interesting how it works. I see that there's also an SBBS address for centralized exchange withdrawals. Why would you have? So it's a bit counterintuitive, right? You have an address that's used for withdrawing from exchanges, an address that's used for normal transactions, and an address that's used for maximum anonymity set.
Yeah. So the reason for the exchange address is legacy. Most exchanges integrated a very early address scheme, which we have improved over the years. And since it's very difficult to make exchanges update, centralized exchanges, so we kept this old kind of V1 scheme for them. And all the rest are kind of moved to a newer and more improved idea. And one of the improvements is that you can encode a lot more details about the transaction into the address. So when you're receiving an address from somebody, it basically tells you how this person wants to receive the funds, what's the anonymity set required, etc. And it makes it easier for your wallet to decide how to make this transaction.
Also, why are addresses so long? I'm looking at this and it's huge in size.
Yeah. So when we're using Lelantus, we can do one of two things. We can use something called public offline address, which is basically works exactly like Bitcoin. You can create one address, publish it, and anyone can send you funds anonymously to your address. It's great for donations, confidential donations, right? And it will never change. However, there is a very nuanced issue that theoretically, the person who sent you the funds through this address can see when you have spent it. Like he doesn't know when or what you did with the funds, but he can track that it was taken out of the pool. That's the only thing they can know using this one-time address, or that never changes. So in order to avoid even this detection, we have added a different scheme called vouchers, which need to be recreated, and they're automatically generated by the wallets and synchronized through SBBS. I know it sounds insane, but that's what we did. And this what causes these very, very long addresses, because it includes 20 vouchers before you need to resynchronize. That's why it's so long.
Yeah, for someone who's used to Bitcoin addresses, this is enormous.
Yeah,
I was
but
thinking if these can be included in a tweet or something, or they're too long. I don't think it's an issue anymore, but it's pretty long.
I agree.
So is there any way you can shorten this or do something when you're sending this to someone and maybe that space is an issue?
Not right now, but it would be a feature to add because it basically depends on the number of vouchers encoded inside. Right now, I think it's 20, but if you encode less, then you can change the length of this address. Definitely possible to add and quite easy to implement.
What else is on the roadmap right now for Beam? What do you plan to add or what do you plan to improve over the next few years?
So in the 2025, I hope to be able to achieve two things. The first one is to launch the Beam Warp, which is the L2, as I said, and to add Ethereum virtual machine support into Beam. So these two things will basically say that you don't longer need to compromise on finality, right? You can trade much faster. The native bridge, which is integrating Beam and the L2 of Beam, the Beam Warp, will make it very easy for you to move assets from the safe and sound kind of proof of work chain to a more, trading-oriented chain, which is the Warp. And the addition of the Ethereum virtual machine will expand the ecosystem of developers and applications that can run there. So basically, you can take any existing application on Ethereum and move it to Beam chain and trade with confidentiality.
Well, that's really nice. I also have to mention that I've been holding this privacy magazine in front of the camera for the entire episode, and there's an article about Beam. You can download this entire magazine for free. It's free and open source on the Bitcoin Takeover website. I think it's bitcoin-takeover.com/privacymag, and you're gonna be able to get this. And there's an article about Beam. I'm gonna tell you exactly at which page. I should know this better since I made this. Okay, it's page 54. It starts at page... No, it's not 54, wait. It's 57. Confidential DeFi, past, present, and future. It's actually written by you, Alex Romanov. I didn't make the connection before, but you're the one who made this, and my girlfriend is the one who drew the Pepe.
Yep.
So if you want to have an extra reading about Beam and how it works and why confidential DeFi is important, then you should check this out. I can also send a print to you, Alex. I'm not sure if you have one.
No, I don't have the physical copy yet.
Yeah, I should really send you one. It's really nice.
It was written by myself and DB, our great community member, very active for many years with Beam. Also a Beam skeptic at the beginning. We have a few people who kind of when you get to know Beam in terms of like really looking into what we've done, I think it's pretty impressive, and like just going to get better with the years to come.
Yeah, shout out to DB because he's very active and very passionate about this. And he is trying to promote this Beam Girl meme, this avatar, My girlfriend right now, I think she did this last night. She created a new vampire Pepe for her collection with the Beam Girl. I hope you guys like that.
Yeah, DB has already proudly displayed it.
So, stupid question, but you mentioned that there's going to be an L2 for Beam. And Beam is the sort of, it uses MimbleWimble, right? And as far as I know, there's nothing in this space that scales better than the MimbleWimble protocol. So why is there a need for an L2 when you have such a scalable base layer?
Few reasons. So the first one is that when we are adding more complexity, it does affect scalability. When we're adding smart contract transactions, they don't necessarily scale as well as simple and native MimbleWimble transactions, and nor do Lelantus, because if they would have been, then we would just use just Lelantus for that. So any complexity that we add, even though it expands the features that we can provide with confidentiality, it does affect the scalability in terms of the blockchain size. However, the most important reason is the finality. Beam is a proof of work coin. It generates one block per minute on average. And it means that whenever you're sending a trade, you need to wait for at least 1 minute to get it on chain, and then wait for additional confirmations to avoid the possibility of a rollback, which is kind of far from the modern standard for DeFi transactions, right? So the most important reason for the L2 is not the scalability in terms of the blockchain size or transaction per second even, but rather the finality time.
Right. I think that mining is the fairest way of getting any sort of coin, because
sure.
you're using something that you already have. You don't have to spend money to get new coins. And I see that you also have a faucet for Beam. I'm going to try that one later to get some coins and play with it. But I was going to ask you, how difficult is it to mine Beam today? And what does it take? Do you have ASICs, or is it still at the GPU level?
Beam is mineable on GPUs. We have our bespoke Beam Hash 3 right now mining algo, which is very efficient. Originally, it was based on Equihash, but we have developed it with the help of Lollydeep, the amazing guy that invented and developed our proprietary or bespoke mining algorithm. So yeah, on GPUs, very effective and very efficient. No ASICs.
When I interviewed Ruben Yap, he was a bit concerned that miners act like mercenaries and they use something like NiceHash, and they just switch from the most profitable coin to the next most profitable coin, and they have no allegiance to any coin. They don't care too much about any protocol. Have you noticed anything similar in the case of Beam, or do you have a strong community of miners?
So we do have some mining pools that are working with us for a long time, and we're continuing to mine Beam, even if it was not the most profitable thing for them. So yes, but on the other hand, this is the way the market works, and I think that's to be expected. And proof of stake is much worse. So I mean, proof of work is still the best and the king in terms of decentralization and fairness. But yeah, obviously, when the price of the coin drops, then the hash rate drops as well. Which, by the way, creates an interesting problem with the bridges, because when you're bridging value from another chain, which is much larger than the power that protects your own chain, then you have a very high incentive for attacks.
Oh, that's interesting. So when you say that proof of stake is inferior, are you referring only to the distribution mechanism, because you have to buy coins from the issuer and it potentially turns you into a security? Or is it about the security of proof of stake per se?
Well, I think there are problems all around which need to be very, very carefully addressed, starting from, yes, like how do you get to become a validator, and how the rewards are distributed, and like what's about the rich get richer in this scenario, and you need to worry about collusions, you need to worry about decentralization in many cases. It's very difficult to create a high quality proof of stake system indeed. Yes.
Let's say that there are some people who would like to invest in Beam to help it develop further. What's your pitch? What would you tell them? Why should they choose to invest in Beam as opposed to, let's say, DarkFi? I put you on the spot here, but I'm just trying to get an elevator pitch.
Yeah, so Beam is going to try to become the kind of privacy place for confidential DeFi, for DeFi trades, right? If you are trading DeFi on-chain, we will try to bring confidentiality to you without any sacrifice in terms of what you can do on-chain, which kind of trades you can make. That's our pitch.
That's very short.
Elevators, depending on which floor we go.
I read over the years that Grin developers are struggling to find funding. Even when I interviewed the creator of MimbleWimble extension block on Litecoin, David Burkett, he was saying that there's almost no money on Grin. And he's happy that he was able to find some funding to build this on Litecoin because it's a bit desolating once you discover that MimbleWimble doesn't have much funding. And before we started this interview and before you told me that there is no money in Beam either, I was thinking that you guys are sort of loaded and you can actually save Grin. But if you do get money, do you consider that it's worthwhile to save Grin as the other implementation? Maybe your rival, but also the one that can help you further build stuff?
Okay, so first of all, David Burkett is amazing. Just wanted to say that if he's listening, I love this guy. And he did an amazing job on the Litecoin extension blocks, and before that, and in general, he is amazing. I do believe that Grin have more funds right now than Beam because of some donations that they got. I have no idea how they are spending these funds, but in terms of the funding, they did have some donations. We are not enemies in any, or not even competitors in any way. We talk a lot, and we talked a lot in the early days. We were, discussing issues together. Less now, but back when it was all in active development, we did have quite a few conversations. So we consider ourselves kind of, in the same, and most other privacy projects as well. We have great relationship with Sphero and Zeno and like everybody, because there is a common goal of privacy, even though there are different technological ways to achieve it. But everybody understands that, before we start kind of fighting between or competing between ourselves, we need to bring the awareness and the education to the higher level. So I think that I would really love Beam to, continue with everybody else alongside us, like Grin especially. Grin were the pioneers of MimbleWimble. They did huge amount of work. So I would definitely help everyone in the privacy space as much as I could. I think it's much more important to develop the technology along many different axes and types. Like we have mentioned zero knowledge, right? But we have huge developments today in the FHE, fully homomorphic encryption field. We have the entire field of trusted execution environments like TEs, that secret network. Also great friends, and Alexander Zaiderson was CEO of Beam, and now he's CEO of Secret Network. So there is this direction. So there are at least 4 or 5 MPC, multi-party computation developments, that are becoming more popular, specifically in the context of Ethereum. I think that the field is exploding from the technological perspective. There are many new directions that need to be researched and implemented, because research is great, but eventually we need robust implementations. So, yeah, I mean, I will help anyone as long as the privacy is going to be, moved forward and advanced as a result.
There's another Beam. So if you go to CoinMarketCap and search for Beam, there's another one that serves a gaming network apparently, and it seems to be more successful in terms of market cap right now.
Yes.
I don't think it has the same technological merits.
Yeah, this brings us to the very beginning of our conversation about the MimbleWimble coin, right? So 2 things are true in this industry. 1, you can take almost any name. And 2, it's much easier to create large market cap for, how I would say, more speculative project, to put it politely, than for a more serious like L1 project. So definitely some sunny afternoon, they came and just took the name Beam, which would have, like, it's okay. Like, I mean, so Beam it is, but we were listed on Binance for a long while, and then we were delisted because of the compliance and privacy issues from like many privacy coins were from many exchanges. But then they also took the Beam ticker, and it's now listed on Binance again, but it's a different coin right now. I have no idea how. I mean, it's probably legal, but it's definitely not ethical or wise to do that. But that's what they did. And yes, there is some other Beam out there with the same ticker on some exchanges that has absolutely no relation to us or privacy whatsoever.
Yeah, so for everyone listening, if you're gonna search for Beam, make sure you look at the right one, the one with the prism logo, like the dark side of the moon, not the one that has like a cake layer logo.
Yeah, it gets actually even worse, because even the news, outlets and all kinds of platforms get confused and mix it. So, for example, you see the price chart for one Beam and then the link to another, and vice versa, or things like Beam is trying to combine privacy and gaming or something like that, because it's all AI generated, and AI doesn't care. Beam is Beam for that. So yeah, there is a lot of confusion. I'm really sad that they decided to take our name for some reason. But I mean, that's the story.
Yeah, that's unfortunate. But there are many such cases, especially with tickers. There's something that's called, I think, Harry Potter Obama Sonic 10 Inu or something, and it has the ticker Bitcoin.
Oh my God. Yeah, I mean,
I've mentioned it just because it's funny. Don't buy that if you're listening to this. Don't. Stay away.
not a trading advice.
Anyway, I was thinking of good questions to ask you about Beam at this point, but I think I covered pretty much everything. Is there anything that you wish I asked you about? Like you were waiting for this question and I didn't bring it up.
I mean, I think it was the first podcast ever I have actually prepared for, in terms of like writing down the points. And one of the reasons for that is because it's much longer, and I'm saying it as a very good thing than usually. Like usually the podcast is like 1 hour that I have participated in, and you can barely touch on things. And what usually happened is that everybody started talking about MimbleWimble, which is kind of the past for us, and then we wouldn't have time to talk about what's happening now. Because everybody usually starts from that point where they forgot about MimbleWimble sometime in 2019, 2020, right? Like,
Yeah, I'm guilty of
what
that.
I mean, that's most people. And I'm very happy that we are rediscovering it kind of today, not just because of Beam or Beam project, but in general. MimbleWimble is and I like kind of we'll see 2 words about it. It's actually a very amazing technology. It's super simple, but it can be extended in a million different ways, and we have utilized some of them to build very advanced features. But it's genius. It's genius because it's just 4 pages of a white paper describing a very simple concept, which nonetheless has become so many things, right? Without MimbleWimble, we could not have been able to add the virtual machine and the atomic swaps and the marketplace and the confidential assets, which don't require smart contracts and are exactly as confidential as Beam. So all of these things are properties of the original genius design of MimbleWimble. I really hope that we will be able to find out who the original inventor is and celebrate him in time, or not. Either way, I'm good. So yeah, I think we did cover most of the topics that are relevant to today's Beam and the situation. I really like the work that you're doing, by the way. Just wanted to say that I don't have too much time to listen to podcasts, but the fact that you have a very precise timestamps about different topics, it's amazing.
I do my best for that.
No, it's absolutely amazing, because I definitely would not have been able to listen through the 7 hours of Amir Taki interview, but I did kind of click on the relevant points, and it's amazing.
Yeah, the man is a polymath. He can talk for hours And he even talked about his favorite mathematicians and some of his fascinations with dinosaurs and the future of humankind and all of the ideas in his head. And I appreciate that you support my work and you like it, because I don't have a format. My format is that the interview is over when we run out of topics to discuss. I don't have like a frame and I say you have to say everything within 1 hour. If you didn't say it, goodbye. This was the podcast.
I really love it. I think it's great to have long form content, which is deep enough and relaxed enough to kind of allow to express thoughts and discuss things. Awesome. Really love it.
Yeah. This is what the internet was made for, right? It was not made for TV formats where you have 60 minutes, 90 minutes, and then you have commercial break and the movie or the news section or whatever.
Totally.
And rest assured that I'm going to add timestamps to this.
Great.
And I gotta say thank you to Natoshi Sakamoto and Exam R and Tom Dwyer and Heartfelt Faction and Untraceable. They were in the chat and they left some feedback, some messages. Thank you very much for being here, guys. Some of them are from the Monero community, as I can tell by their avatars.
You mentioned Untraceable. Untraceable did a great review of Beam wallets and Beam in general recently on Twitter, so look it up. And we also have a weekly Twitter space that is actually today, like on Fridays in the evening. And last time we have discussed an idea of making a bridge between Beam and Monero. And we will continue talking about this today. We had some interesting thoughts on the subject, kind of bringing the liquidity of Monero and using it for DeFi trading could be interesting for some. So join into that in the Beam privacy space if you're, if you find this subject interesting.
Yeah, Monero was supposed to have Tari, and that one hasn't launched yet. So there's a window of opportunity for you guys to step in and provide the service that people want.
Yeah, I think we will do just that.
Yeah, I look forward to that. A bridge between Beam and Monero sounds good. Yeah, and great. Last question, which is the one that most people would ask you from within the toxic maximalist community. Why don't you build on Bitcoin?
I mean, you know the answer and you talk a lot about it. So it's kind of, everybody would love to build on Bitcoin, but that's not as simple.
You have a question from UTXO. He says, in the beginning, Alex mentioned how Beam prunes the blockchain. Isn't the exact same thing possible in Bitcoin?
How the Beam what?
Prunes the blockchain. He's referring to the client level pruning where you can just keep the latest 10 gigabytes or something of blocks.
Yeah, it's due to the way the transactions and the UTXOs are actually structured. In Bitcoin, you have the Bitcoin script, which is a little bit more difficult to use. And actually, these are like the first sentences in the original MimbleWimble white paper, which says, unfortunately, we will have to give up on Bitcoin script and replace it with the Pedersen commitment structure. By the way, I highly recommend reading it. It was written kind of with Bitcoin in mind. Everything written in the MimbleWimble white paper was kind of based on Bitcoin and for Bitcoin in many ways. But yes, the unique structure of UTXOs is what possible the cut-through feature and the pruning.
Yeah, as for the creator of MimbleWimble, I guess we have this Mount Rushmore that's in the process of being built, in which we have Satoshi Nakamoto, creator of Bitcoin, Nicholas von Sieberhagen, creator of, I think it was called CryptoNote, and then it became Monero. And yes, there's also Tom Elvis Jedusor, creator of MimbleWimble. Tom Elvis Jedusor, for Harry Potter nerds out there, is the name of Lord Voldemort in the French version.
Yeah, The whole like MimbleWimble is the spell from Harry Potter that prohibits you from telling secrets. So it's all kind of Harry Potter lore out there.
Isn't it the muting spell? Like
Yeah,
it's
yeah.
not just
Like,
secrets, it's just muting someone. That's
right.
pretty cool. What are some other references to Harry Potter in MimbleWimble?
So obviously, Grin comes from Gringotts, and they have a
That's the
lot of like
bank
the
of the elves, right?
yeah, yeah. I'm not an expert. I'll have to consult my daughter about
No, they're
that. But
goblins. Sorry.
yeah, but Jedusor, I think, was the nickname of the original of the founder of Green. Um, so yeah, they have. No, I'm sorry. It was Ignotus Peverell. That was his nickname. I'm sorry, of the Green founder. So yeah, there were a lot of, and I think there are a few other terms of Harry Potter universe all around the code base.
So that's cool. Ignotus Peverell was the creator of Grin, and Tom
Right.
Elvis Jedusor, the creator of MimbleWimble.
Yes. Ignotus also was anonymous, and nobody knows who he is as well.
The lore of this protocol is super cool. It's nerdy.
I
It's,
agree.
you know, I saw a 6-year-old kid reading Harry Potter just a couple of weeks ago, and I was thinking, you have these elements that are universal across generations, across countries. You have, for my generation, it was Pokemon. That one was everywhere. We all grew up watching Saturday morning cartoons, and those cartoons were Dragon Ball Z and Pokemon, most likely. So these are universal, but there's also Harry Potter, which is something that I was reading. The beauty of it is that new books were getting launched as I was growing up. So I was a teenager at the same age as Harry Potter at one point. And
Hmm.
he was getting his first girlfriend, and I was also starting to like girls. And it was interesting because it was relatable. That's what I'm trying to say. And to see that it's being presented to the new generation, and now I think it's also being taught in schools here in Romania. Pretty cool. Maybe that they're gonna end up buying MimbleWimble tokens.
Yeah, just not the MimbleWimble coin.
Just not that one, yeah. But I see, I don't know why. That one is ranked number 235 on the markets. So it seems like it has some price action, but Beam is underperforming it.
Yeah, I mean, I'm not much of an expert in price action. I mostly build and focused on that, which was, by the way, one of the kind of issues that our community is rightfully angry with us for many, many years, is that we really suck in everything related to marketing, what we do. And it happens a lot that we show what we've built to someone and say, wow, that's amazing. Like, you built so much. How come nobody knows about it? And we're like, dude, we suck at marketing. I don't know. So yeah, like it's an issue. Yeah, something to try to improve. But
I guess part of the answer is also that if you look at MimbleWimble coin, it's only listed on 2 exchanges. And when you're only listed on 2 exchanges, it's much easier to manipulate the price. Every buy order is going to influence it much more. As opposed to
yeah,
Beam, which is listed on 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7 exchanges with different pairs.
so I think one of the problems is that the coin market cap view of things, it kind of like I mean, it's great for traders, but there needs to be a different sort of I don't know, board or way to find things by technology, by topics that are being addressed. Because there are a lot of projects in the space, right? It's very, very difficult to maintain attention of kind of general population about one thing for a long period of time. However, it should be possible or easier for people who are going deeper into specific fields or specific areas to find things. I think Messari originally wanted to achieve something like that, so they have a huge database, but I think it's still very difficult. uh, because it's very difficult to distinguish between truth and fiction, right? Every once in a while, I hear about a project, I go into the landing page and it says we can do this and that, and then you dive deeper into the code, and a few hours later, you say, yeah, we want to be decentralized right now when we have one sequencer or whatever, or we are planning to build this, but it's on the roadmap in 2 years. So this process of doing serious reviews of technologies and kind of deeper analysis, I think it's very important. I think you're doing a great job on that from your side, and I wish there were kind of more sources of various kinds that analyze projects on a kind of deeper level and provide opinion on them. Not paid and shield, but rather kind of more objective and kind of technology and science oriented.
There's always this narrative, right, that 99.9% of coins are scams and shit coins, and it's not worth it to look into them. But this begs the question, because you have like 3,000 coins right now. You get more of them every day. It begs the question, what is the 0.01% that is worthwhile, that we should talk about? And when you ask this question, people are going to say, no, just focus on Bitcoin, blah, blah, blah. That's the classic maximalist cop-out. But there's so much stuff out there that is not scammy, that is actually building stuff, and that if you actually break it down into technological pieces, can actually improve Bitcoin. So, I don't know. I'm trying to cover this 0.01% the best that I can. I've also covered projects that are shady this season. There was something called Digital Gold, and the only reason I covered that one was because Charlie Shrem is involved. But the funny part is that I noticed within 1 month that he was very enthusiastic about that one, and after the interview, he left about 40 minutes into the interview and he left some other guy to talk, and now he was removed from the website. He doesn't promote it anymore. Something happened there. So I like to believe that my interview had an actual impact, because I didn't call it a scam. I wasn't toxic, but I actually asked questions like, what are you guys building here? What is this? How does it work? And they had, it's really funny, and I'm sorry I'm taking your time with this, but they had a system where they were quote unquote upgrading the network each time a node was getting deployed. And in order for you to get your coins, so there was no way to mine, you could only buy them from the 100% pre-miner. And they were saying, you don't actually buy the coins, because in order for you to receive the coins, the network needs to get to this level. So there was an incentive for people to buy AWS servers or something, or rent them, and then spin up a bunch of nodes so that they can get their coins. But after these nodes shut down, there was no downgrade. It was just going up, 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 up. It was a fake metric that gave you the impression that there are lots of users. And the scheme was that they're going to sell you these worthless tokens that they pre-mined, and they're going to use, they were only accepting USDT and USDC. And with that one, they're going to buy Bitcoin, and they're going to build a reserve. And basically, they're going to say, yes, your tokens are backed by our reserve. But is there any way to redeem your tokens for the Bitcoin that they hold in reserve? No. So it was very shady. And I'm happy that after this interview, it seems like Charlie Shrem gave up. But the original point was that I enjoy covering that 0.01% and finding gems in this industry, because there's a lot of interesting stuff that's being built. Not everything that is not Bitcoin is a scam. And I guess we should widen our spectrum and understand that this is just like the Linux ecosystem, where I think I heard a very cool story from the co-creator of Trezor, who used to work for, I think it was Red Hat Linux, which was one of the commercial or enterprise versions of Linux. And there was another one I'm missing. I don't remember the name of it. But there was another one that was doing basically the same thing. But he realized while working on it that basically there were two teams that were apparently rival but they were building the same stuff. And if one of them had a major breakthrough, then the other one could copy it and also improve. So they were building off of each other's efforts. And the competition was actually a way for them to actually develop something much greater and much better. And I see this in the same way. I think every legit way of improving technology in the Bitcoin space will come back to Bitcoin eventually and improve it.
Oh, I totally agree. First of all, all of this kind of speculative action, it's great. Like it's fun, but it doesn't in any way take from the serious efforts of technological development, which yes, can be used in Bitcoin as well. Obviously, I look at it more from a kind of pure, like, less Bitcoin, but more of technology and privacy perspective in general. I think that there are some standards, like which are basic for a good project, open source, right? Like fully open source, and clear understanding of what exactly the goals are of the project, how it operates. So there are a lot of attempts to say, yeah, we are kind of doing this, but then in reality, it's something else. So this is one of the factors that, like, if you're reading the white paper and you don't understand exactly what's going on, it's usually the sign that it's not exactly what it tries to sell itself to be.
But this space became so lazy. Like, there used to be a time when people were writing white papers trying to explain what this is about. Now you just get a dog JPEG, and they're like, yeah, this one has a dog with a hat. So if you think
Yeah,
it's
but
funny,
come
buy
on,
it.
it's with a head. Yeah, come on. Yeah, but I mean, that's to be expected. In the early days of Beam, and we always ask that, what is the adoption? What will the adoption look like? And that's what the adoption looks like: ETFs and dogs with heads.
I'm not sure if this is adoption. It's more like mainstream acceptance, but it's not really adoption. Adoption would mean that you have some actual on-chain activity, whereas most of it is on exchanges.
Yeah, but that's the reality, and we need to ask ourselves why exactly. So, usability is a great example, right? Usability of crypto is not very welcoming, especially for newcomers. It's very difficult to understand. Always has been like that, and not solved. It's not simple to solve. And then when people get into situations that they need to deal with that, uh, they kind of default to custodial solutions. They default to things that provide them with more kind of security, in a sense. Because when you send somebody funds on Bitcoin and the transaction goes through, that's it, right? There is no one to call. There is no revert. There is no anything, and it's scary. So part of it is education and like be your own bank, and not your keys, not your funds. People who are into the space, they understand, right? They understand what it means. But people who come and they are new and they're learning it, very, very difficult for them. Like, what does it mean? Like, I have this wallet, and if I lose it, that's it. All the money is gone. Like, it's, yeah, not simple to adapt to that.
But I have to say that the Beam wallet interface is pretty nice. Colorful, looks friendly. The onboarding, I did like that you have this 12 seed word backup, and
Yeah.
then you have a randomized verification. I did like that process of how you register.
Yeah, in Beam, we're trying to keep everything local in terms of everything, all the applications, all the data is inside the wallet. You don't need to go online for anything. And if you do, it's just through the SBBS and the node system. I think it's important to not to rely on web resources for interacting with decentralized applications. I think local first design in this specific area is needed and should be preferred, because today it's like, if you don't have, like on Ethereum, for example, specifically, you don't have MetaMask, and you go to, I don't know, Uniswap website, you can do anything, right? Take this site down. Like, I don't really know how many people will be able to access the blockchain without it.
Yeah, but on the other hand, there's so much stuff on Ethereum that just integrating one or two services would be like choosing winners and losers, you know? So I understand that, for example, core developers will want to only work on the node software and consensus and leave everything else in terms of interfaces to third parties that are going to build
Yeah,
this.
but the question is, I mean, maybe there is, and I don't know, but I would love to be educated on that. If there is a wallet for Ethereum that allows you to run, like it's third party, it shouldn't be created by the Ethereum core, but it should be, able to provide like a plugin architecture that allows you to run applications locally. I wonder if there is such a thing. Maybe there is, and then I would love to learn about it. I just didn't see it yet.
I think some of these hardware wallets, they integrate something like that, where they have lots of features within their dashboard because they don't want you to leave their ecosystem. And I think Edge Wallet has something similar. I gotta look into that. I'm not sure about Ethereum, but they are sort of maximalists in terms of adding all the features that you can possibly have.
Gotcha. Yeah, no, the question is like whether it requires to be connected to their servers to get
It does, yeah.
Yeah.
They have their own backends.
Yeah, so that's kind of the decentralization goals that were always important to us in terms of being able to run as much as possible locally. But it requires obviously more technical knowledge. It's less convenient than just going into a browser. So it's always a trade-off, by the way, in privacy between the ease of use and the kind of technological competency that you need to do complicated things. We struggled with that a lot. We tried to explain things in simple terms and backfired. Nobody understood what we're talking about. Sometimes we managed to fix it, and sometimes, as you saw, it's just like, what are these four addresses for? Like, go explain it. Yeah, it's nuanced.
Yeah, thank you very much, Alex. I think I ran out of questions at this point. It's funny that someone said in the chat that MimbleWimble coin is such a terrible name. It's like Monero was called Ring Signatures coin.
Yeah, the Ring City coin.
And I would like to thank everyone who listened to this. There seems to have been an issue and we got disconnected by Twitter, but the stream on YouTube worked seamlessly. I'm also going to upload this on Spotify this weekend. And also, once again, thanks to the sponsors, as I mentioned during this episode, Siteshift.ai, Citrea, Layer 2 Labs, Bitcoin.com News, No Once, and Hodling.ch. Thank you guys. I'll see you in the next.